Hello, and on behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, 3 Advanced Use Cases for VMware Cloud on AWS, presented by Greg Newman, VP of Marketing at Zadara, and Mark Levitt, Senior Director of Product Marketing for Zadara. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the Global VMUG program. Before we begin, I have 3 quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for you on demand. You will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link, so keep an eye out for that. Second, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation. All questions will need to be entered in the question window near the bottom of your GoToWebinar screen. Third, there will be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit the webcast. Please make sure to take a minute and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. Attendees from today's webcast who opted in at registration will be receiving a Starbucks gift card. A representative from Zadara will email you all following the webcast today. All right, let's get started. Greg, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, everybody, and good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. We're glad to have you join us today. Today's webinar is all about VMware Cloud on AWS and how we at Zadara can help make it more productive for you. As you can see on your screen now, I'm Greg Newman. Hi, and I'm happy to be joined by Mark Levitt. Hi, Mark.
Morning, Greg.
Well, today is a fun topic. I know that we introduced this functionality about a year or so ago. We've had great response. We have a lot of customers taking advantage of it. And in today's webinar, we're going to explore why that might be. So let's jump in and get started. Here's our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about VMware Cloud and AWS. For those of you who are using it currently, please raise your hands. Okay, good. I see there are quite a few. Adding Zadara Storage to VMware Cloud and AWS. That's, of course, the meat of it. And then we're going to show some use cases because I think this is really the best way to see how the benefits of Zadara plus AWS and VMware Cloud really come to life. And then we are going to leave some time at the end for Q&A. So for those of you that may have questions as we go along, please do put your questions in the questions panel in the GoToWebinar interface. And we will get to them at the end. We're certainly going to try to get to all of them. If we can't get to all of them, we will prepare answers and distribute them later. But typically we get to all of them. All right, so let's jump in, Mark.
All righty then.
A quick commercial note. We are, in fact, an AWS competency partner. We're very pleased about that. Been since 2011, and of course that's important because our close work with AWS means we know exactly how to build and manage systems that take advantage of everything AWS has to offer and everything that we have to offer that complements.
Right, we're not coming to this new.
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. Well, what is it we do exactly? I think that the best way to describe it may be to say that we give users the control of enterprise storage together with the agility of the cloud and the flexibility of the cloud, right? There's a cloud business model.
And that was exactly the founder's vision.
That's
what they went after. And that's what we've been executing for 9 years now.
Can you believe it? It's great.
That's an amazing number.
They were really ahead of the curve in a lot of ways, but the market has caught up, and we're excited because what we see is that when things like VMware Cloud and AWS come out, and we see big companies and smart companies like VMware doing these things, we know that our original vision has been validated, and we're glad that we can add. We live in an ecosystem. All of us in IT know this. We live in an ecosystem. You need to make sure that you have all the solutions necessary to complete your vision, whatever you're trying to accomplish. It's never one solution, right? And in the case of VMware Cloud and AWS, we're glad we can complement them. And here's a little bit about what we mean when we say we complement them. First of all, great job, VMware. We love what you do, but thanks to certain limitations at AWS, a user can't in fact get to.
Right. Yeah, and this is really about mixing your environments with combinations of VMware Cloud on AWS or elsewhere, and native AWS EC2 implementations. It's actually very difficult to share data between them as it stands with the default offerings.
Yeah, and as our diagram shows, Mark, and we can't help ourselves. This is a big part of what we do. You can't get to your on-premises stuff either without paying extra fees.
Without paying a lot of extra fees, and this is the egress thing. Again, personal opinion, I think, VMware Cloud has got the best story going for implementing hybrid clouds.
Yeah.
Because they, in no small measure, because they control the format of the virtual machines. So VM-based applications, it's a great answer. However, if there's data involved and you've got to move the data back and forth, that gets expensive really fast.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take a look at maybe a different way to do it. And of course, this is the introduction to what we like to call our enterprise data cloud. We have a variety of features and functionality baked into it. We're going to get into that in a little bit more detail. But with this graphic, Mark, I think users hopefully can see that inserting Zadara into the equation gives you an answer to all of those limitations that we talked about in the previous slide.
Yeah, and not just an answer, because you can answer each of the objections in some way. The problem is those ways tend to involve expense, yes, but also complexity. And this is what we're trying to avoid here. We're saying, okay, if you want to really address these hybrid environment challenges, what you need is a tool that can really simplify it for you.
It's a good word to use, and I'm glad you did, because I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later. There's no getting away from the fact that enterprise storage is complex. We're not going to pretend it isn't. The idea is, how can we make it as simple as possible? And I think that's the goal for everybody who works in enterprise IT. We know we can't reduce some things beyond a certain level, but how can we make it as simple as possible? And we do that with an integrated platform approach. And in fact, this slide is what this is all about. A single service, any data type, any protocol, any location, right?
Right. Well, we also call universal storage, right? And it's not the sexiest term, but it hopefully gets the point across. Because as you said, in terms of applying Zadara Storage in a data center environment, whether it's on premises or in a colo or from a cloud environment, we have all those flexibility points. We have all kinds of connectivity. We've got several different flavors of Ethernet. We've got fiber channel for the environments that want that. We have the ability to do file and block and object over all of those things. And so it's really just very applicable. And then as we will get into, you also have a very broad choice in terms of what you want the characteristics of storage on a per application product to be.
We are going to get into that in a second, and I'm going to click to the next slide here in a moment. But before we do that, it occurred to me while you were talking that it'd be a good time to point out two things. One, first of all, on the slide you can see VMware, and that is one of the integrated data services and apps that we interact with. We have a broad platform. We do a number of things, and this would be a good time also to mention there's a hardware component here. I think for those who are not familiar. Right. Probably good time to mention that. Right.
We don't just you don't just download Zadara Storage. Zadara Storage is hardware resident, and so if your deployment is on premises or in a co-location facility for you, then Zadara hardware shows up. Yeah. What's really different about Zadara hardware is that we own it.
Right. We own it. You just pay for what you use.
You pay for the capacity that you consume. We own it. Depreciation's on our books, all that kind of thing. But it is hardware based, and therefore it is a complete solution that we can completely guarantee, establish these very high SLAs that we have that we'll talk about later also.
Yep. So there you go. So let's talk a little more deeply about the system itself, what we like to call our virtual private storage array. That's our patented technology.
Right. And certainly for a VMUG audience, this kind of diagram is going to look very familiar because it's very similar to a virtualized server or a virtualized server cloud environment in a high level diagram. But the key thing here is that we create these virtual private storage arrays. They can be created on a department level. You can create one for a whole company. They can be created on an application or even multiple for applications that provide different characteristics. Every one of these VPSAs has dedicated resources. So they have their own CPUs, they have their own RAM, they have their own storage media, they have their own cache. So there are no shared resources for these virtual arrays. And that means that you get consistent high performance, even when you have a whole lot of them.
Yep.
And this goes back to, you mentioned the patent. I mean, this is all about establishing true multi-tenancy capabilities. This is not a Rube Goldberg device. This is architected from the ground up to do this sort of thing. So, certainly people that are that work in enterprise data understand that you have, what is enterprise data? There's, endless shades of requirement in terms of trade-offs between performance and capacity and cost and retention and all the things that you work on. And so the ability here is that you can create storage on the fly, on demand, that you don't pay for until you use, to address each specific use case that you've got, if that's your objective.
Exactly, and that single tenant experience you're talking about with the no shared resources. Also, I think we talk about it a little bit later, but I want to mention it now because it comes up quite a bit. Data sovereignty.
Data sovereignty is huge because, on the one hand, we will put your data wherever you want it. And again, that's the on-premises options, the co-locations options, adjacent to public clouds. In the case of, certainly if you're talking about AWS cloud on VMware cloud on AWS. But the key phrase there is wherever you want it.
Right. You
have absolute control over where your data resides and the ability to remove it or move it at any time. And we'll get to, we talk about encryption in flight and data. You also have total security there as well.
I did put this slide together, Mark, because I felt like there's so much to talk about with regard to our storage capabilities in general. And you'd mentioned a number of these things already. I don't want to dwell on this slide, but I do want people to see some of the highlights, the things that we know people ask for. And if I were an enterprise storage admin, I would want to make sure my enterprise storage could do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the top level answer is, we are enterprise storage. We understand the enterprise storage requirements. We do the enterprise storage things.
Exactly.
And because that's table stakes. I mean, again, we've been in business for 11 years, so we have to do that or we wouldn't have been in business. But, so we're going to say at the top level, block, file, object, flash, hard disk, combinations, thin provisioning, all that kind of thing that you expect. And if you need to dig deeper than that, let's set up separate conversations because and for the purpose of this discussion, let's take that on faith that we act full cost for support. We'll talk about that actually as regards to a specific case.
One thing on this slide in the screen that is not normally part of enterprise storage: non-disruptive upgrades.
Yeah, well, we have to do that.
Yeah.
It's baked into our model. So everybody's always anybody with any experience in enterprise data centers is very twitchy around non-disruptive upgrades. We do them all the time.
Yep. All right, let's keep moving, people. Secure encryption. Well, we talked a little bit about this, but the thing we maybe didn't speak enough about: who gets the keys?
Right. It's great when your data gets encrypted. It's even better when you hold the keys, and with Zadara, you hold the keys. And as I like to say, please don't lose them because we can't help you if you lose the keys.
That's, yes, unfortunately true. But this kind of security is what you expect and frankly demand when you're looking at enterprise storage. I mean, and we hear it again and again from customers.
Well, this is the control of enterprise storage piece, right?
Exactly.
Even though it may exist elsewhere.
To extend that thought, and you see here on the screen a little snapshot of our VPSA interface. If anybody out there is looking at this and thinks it looks familiar, chances are it looks familiar, of course, because we model it on classic concepts of virtualized storage management. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here where we don't need to.
Right. Well, not reinventing the wheel, and also making sure that those skills that you and your colleagues and your staff have built up in managing storage transfer straight over. I mean, right? I mean, we've had these conversations with customers and also like on trade show floors. And storage administrator walks up and goes, "Oh, I see what you're doing there."
Yeah.
Well, that's the point.
Good, right? Intuitive.
That's good.
Yeah. So we give you the analytics and the performance metrics, of course, so you can see what's going on in your system. The automated alerts. Obviously, the elastic provision you were talking about.
Yeah.
The chargebacks are a real hot feature. I know a lot of people really get a kick out of this because they haven't had this kind of a capability before.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I've been in enterprise storage for a long time, and it is stunning to me that we are still that customers are still struggling with getting real chargeback, even if you're just doing showback. Actually getting the numbers. That's just a standard part of our offering.
Yeah.
So if you think about somebody in an enterprise and they set up a bunch of different arrays for different purposes or different clouds or whatever it is, different departments, the chargeback just falls out of it.
Yeah. So you're right. When you're managing multiple departments, it's great.
Yeah.
If you're a service provider who's managing multiple customers,
or even an internal service provider.
An internal service provider, exactly. So really, really handy feature, and it is surprising, Mark, that it's not more common, but it is baked right into.
We're here to help with that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we need to take just a moment here to say this is important because a lot of people come to us thinking, oh, terrific, you've got all the technology I want. That's only part of the story.
Yeah, which is true.
Which is all true, like we've just been focusing on, but there's another part of the story, and it's perhaps even a more important part of the story, because this is the revolutionary aspect, in my opinion, of what Zadara offers to people and to enterprises and service providers. And that is, we bring a proactive approach to the management, the daily management.
To the operational storage. Health.
Yes. And so when you look at how we operate, we are, and we're going to see a little bit about this in a couple of slides. We are across the world. We have over 250 points of presence. We have support teams on 4 continents. The sun never sets on Zadara.
Nope.
And that approach is why when we talk about enterprise storage as a service, we put the emphasis on service. Right.
Right. And I just want to not qualify, but put some context around our SLAs, which is understand we're not saying that nobody will ever experience any downtime, because the real world is not like that. What we're saying is that, one, we are very reliable, that our uptime is well in excess of 5.9 requirements. But also it's a commitment to our customers that we will share your pain. If you have an outage, then we will participate. We'll always share your pain in terms of trying to support it, but we will also then credit back your time down.
Exactly.
And it starts after the first minute, where it's none of this, hey, we're only 4 nines and you only get 20% a month maximum credit or anything like that. It's like, okay, if we impact you, we will credit you back at 100% starting at minute 1.
Yep, exactly. Thank you very much for explaining that, because we do get questions about that. And it's exactly as you say, Mark, it's about us aligning our interests with our customers' interests.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
This is important. Now we talked to everybody online here. We talked a little bit about Zadara at a high level. I think everybody can see now what we're about, but diving deeper into some use cases.
I think we call this 3 use cases. We may overachieve.
We're going to
overachieve just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just start with the basic case. VMware Cloud on AWS. Again, the artwork should look pretty familiar to everybody on this audience. So how do you add Zadara Storage to VMware Cloud? There's a couple answers to that. One is you just add it. That's what you do. We have, however, some really good resources that go step by step to show you how to add it into your VMware Cloud on AWS environment. I mean, literally step by step, not just on the Zadara side, but also on the AWS and the VMware side. It's not, in the end, it's not all that complicated, and you're adding it in as client storage. We present, in this case, we're saying file or block. Object also is an option. And that's it, right? So you're there, it's added, and what do you get? Well, you get right off the top. So what have you added to your environment is the ability to do snapshots, which are read-only. So for clarification, so the snapshots are read-only instant image. It is also instantly restorable. Clones are very similar to snapshots, but they are read-writable. And then you have the ability, and we'll discuss this more in other use cases, to do remote mirroring for high availability and disaster recovery. Storage medium, I mentioned before, a lot of flexibility here. It can be all flash, it can be all hard disk, it could be a mixture of them. The key is to meet your business defined objectives. Storage types, yes, it's the bottom line. File, block, object, all kinds of different protocols, different versions of CIFS, different versions of S3, also Swift. Location, key, especially if you're really looking at or using AWS Cloud for multi-cloud or hybrid cloud. The key is you put the data where you want it, where it makes the most sense. And by the way, that can evolve over time. It's super easy to start with it on your data, in your data center, say, and then migrate it to a cloud adjacent data center as your workload shift and back, if that makes sense. Private clouds, public clouds, all that stuff, we do it all the time. This is our bread and butter. What you get from us that you don't get in a lot of other answers is mature support for Microsoft environments, including VSS for your application-aware backups, failover clustering, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and an Active Directory. And you can learn more. So we do have a set of pages to elucidate, to expand on this subject. You can also just go into Google and do Zadara VMware Cloud, and you'll see that if copying this link. You can also get that link directly if you want to download the presentation.
Yep, go check out our website, or like Mark says, go to Google. You're exactly right.
Oops. Okay, so let's talk about data center extension. We have so that accomplished our basic connectivity. We've got that. Yep. Cool. Now, what about extension? So we'll start with 2 data centers, and both running VMware Cloud on AWS, another one to VMware Cloud on premises. Same kind of setup, right? Because nothing really changes here. They can both access the same data sets. This is a physics allowing kind of thing. Network delays matter, but if the network will allow, you can actually access the same storage from both places. And we have customers absolutely doing that. Now, what do you get? Hey, look, you don't have to do a migration, right? If this works for you, if you're, again, the network delays work for you, nothing migrates. It's all in one place. And then you can move the data any which way you want. You can also create all kinds of copies, which then this would include snapshots and clones and remote clones, a lot of data mobility capabilities. And this is, use cases are, how many can you think of, right? I mean, clearly the test and dev thing is very straightforward. You want to test some applications in a sandbox environment, test them to destruction, go ahead. Application consistent backups and DR, right? So, and analytics and machine learning. Again, you're going to harvest your production data, move it into a different environment, and work on it there. And that's where the cloud thing, the elasticity of the cloud environment, of course, really, really shines for bursting for projects like that.
Yep, good point.
Okay. Business continuity, which is just an elaboration, really, of what we just talked about. So we have the same basic setup, except now we're using 2, and this is just for simplification. It can be as many VPSAs as you want, doing whatever you want. But for simple cases, hey, we've got 2 of them. They're supporting 2 different environments, but they're doing the remote mirroring between, which is where you get your disaster recovery. And your RPOs, your recovery point objectives, can be down to a minute, with the caveat that network latencies always matter. But you can get very, very low RPOs and very low RTOs for the data. And it's just what you should be getting from this sequence is that these are all very simple and very simple evolutions of a very basic setup.
Yep.
Okay. Production volume. So this is same kind of thing. So VMware Cloud on AWS, VMware Cloud somewhere else, might be another one in AWS, might be someplace else, doesn't matter. Again, the assumption is that they're close enough that the networks can work so we can share data. And then what we're doing is we're actually then cloning that data. So making a full binary copy that then becomes read-writable. And I would just take a moment to pause and say that clone can be local to the source VPSA. It can also be remote, be on a different VPSA. Mm-hmm. And the clone is, once it's established, even in the remote case, is instantly available for access. So you can really get great turnaround times on doing things like application testing, version testing, and lots of what if testing, analytics, things like that. You know, harvest your data again for greater value. So this is what I just said. You'd think it was my slide. So yeah, one of the ones I didn't mention though, it's worth bringing up because this is becoming more and more of an issue, is the ability to harvest your data for analytics, but also to then, before you go through your analytics processing, to anonymize your data to make sure you're staying on the right side of things like GDPR and CCPA and all of the coming in the middle of, still coming, waves of privacy regulations and compliance. So the ability to take a data set that is your real production data set and just cleanse it of personally identifiable information before you do your analytics is something that we've seen a lot of interest in.
Yeah, good point. That's a good use case. I agree. We see a lot of it right now.
And then there's this one. So here's your bonus case.
This is a hot item.
It is a hot item. We've got a lot of interest going here internationally. This is US and Europe running on this one. So using a Windows Server failover cluster to use SQL Standard Edition in AWS, or in this case, VMware Cloud on AWS. So same basic setup, and you can see from the icons there, we've got a SQL Server cluster on the first and third hosts. Now here are the conditions. This is the build, so I didn't dump all the text all out at once. If you have failover clustering, and you have multiple SQL Server databases, and you have Microsoft Software Assurance, and you need clustered SQL Server for availability.
Yeah, that's the key.
Right? Because you need to be available all the time. That's the key pitch there. But a single instance of your database will handle your performance requirements, right? So the multiple databases is for availability, not for performance.
And presumably everybody can do their own calculations.
Yeah, this is the kind of information that only you know about your SQL database. Yeah. Then you may be able to leverage your Windows failover cluster to use a standard edition SQL Server in active passive failover. And that works for us because we fully support and have for a long time the failover cluster heartbeats and things. So this allows you to use that SQL Server standard instead of the enterprise edition. This is big money, right? For people who handle Microsoft licensing understand that this can be a lot of money depending on your environment. This is a longer conversation. As you can get from the text here, this is hey, this may be a great fit for you. It may not. You need to engage in a conversation, do some research, and see how it fits your environment. So what we have here is a link to some great resources that we have to help you make that decision. There's also a great blog post on AWS Partner Portal that is referenced here. Again, you can Google Zadara SQL Server, and this stuff will pop up, or just go to our web page, navigate in, and you'll get it.
Yep. Yeah, you see a lot of, as you said, Mark, a lot of resources there. We have ebooks and various things that will help describe what this does, how it works, and the benefits. Well, good. These use cases obviously get into some specificity.
Yeah.
And
well, they range from pretty generally applicable to this one's like, okay.
Yeah.
If you're trying to move your SQL Server into the cloud, there are a lot of potential gotchas, and we think we have a really good answer if you meet the criteria.
Exactly. For those of you that are listening to us and have not seen necessarily your exact use case, tell us about it. We'd love to hear what you're trying to do. Chances are we've already encountered it and solved for it. Because after 9 years of this, there's very little we have not seen.
Right. Yeah. Remember, we were software storage as a service before it was cool. So,
exactly.
So we've seen all kinds of interesting use cases.
I thought this would be good to put up, Mark. We are in 16 AWS regions currently, and you can see them on the map here. We are adding as we go. And I think in 2020 we'll have about, I want to say 5 more. potentially. But we'll make those announcements in due course.
Right, and for us, standing up a new environment doesn't take particular long. It's our agile nature. We can stand up a new region really quickly.
When we say we're in these regions, obviously let's mention we do direct connect. We're in.
To make sure you get the performance to your storage.
We're in data centers that are literally adjacent to the AWS storage, and so latency is typically not an issue that we need to be concerned about. Control your data, control your costs. People do ask us this question all the time, right? Okay, great. So, this stuff comes with all kinds of features and benefits.
Right.
What's it going to cost me?
What does that service cost me? What is that white glove service?
So we had the evaluator group a few years ago do a study, and it's a 10-year study actually. So we looked at really the long-term value.
Well, and we think that's important, right? You've got to look out at least 6 to 10 years on what your life cycle costs are going to be.
You got the refresh cycle.
Because of the refresh cycle.
Exactly. And so as you can see with the bumpy line representing CapEx, you spend some money up front, of course, a bunch, in this case, $1 million. The spend goes up, it dips for a little bit around year 5 and 6, but then there's your refresh, it hits again, and you've got to spend a bunch more. With Zadara, it is very low up front, which you'll find with other cloud services, only thanks to the comprehensive nature of what we offer. We find that our integrated platform, we find we can keep the cost low throughout. People are not necessarily needing to add big costs to achieve the kind of enterprise functionality that they need.
Yeah, and in particular, we especially with the ability to be on premises with the same model, we scale to large data sets really cost effectively.
Yeah, good point.
And the key point, you mentioned the bumpiness and the refresh cycle in the CapEx. So you usually have a tech refresh out around year 5, somewhere between 3 and 5 usually. You never have to do that with us.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get your tech refreshed, but it's part of the service.
Hey, let's talk about that for a second. I'm so glad you brought that up because remember recently, last year, we added
NVMe drives.
Our NVMe stuff.
Right.
And we saw, thanks to the efficiencies in the NVMe stuff, that we could actually lower the costs for people who migrated up.
Yeah, I mean, it's more general. NVMe was a great proof point for that. But really what it is our model allows for users and service providers particularly to basically stay on the most optimum cost curve.
Right.
So as the price per gigabyte goes down because higher density devices and new technology devices come out, you can get those upgrades. As soon as we release a capability like NVMe drives, all you have to do is request it. It doesn't cost you anything to do there's no service fee to ship it to you to change your contract. In fact, it's quite common for your bill to go down because you're implementing new technology. It has a better cost per gigabyte characteristics almost always. And we have customers that have done this already, 3 working on what I'm thinking of is working on their 4th iteration of that.
Yeah.
So this is very real and it has very real impacts to the total cost of ownership.
And for those of you that are worried about Zadara, when you hear that costs go down, don't worry. We know data usage always goes up.
Yeah, right. That's our trick is like, we'll reduce your cost per gigabyte. But we know you're going to use more gigabytes, so it's okay.
It's just
we both do well in this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the key again. When we talk about our interests being aligned, as a service provider, we know we have to earn your business every day.
And that's a great point. That is a key point of being a service provider is if you don't like us, you can kick us out.
Yeah.
These people didn't.
Thank you, Mark. And so I thought I'd switch to this slide because, don't take our word for it. My goodness. Here are at least some of the companies that have trusted us with their data and their storage operations. And we're very pleased and we're very proud. We have many, many more customers than this, of course, big and small. And I should point out to those who are on today's webinar, getting started with Zadara is not only easy, but very low cost. In other words, our recommendation typically to new customers is find a particular workload, find a particular use case. I know that DevOps comes to mind frequently as a good one.
Analytics is another one.
Start small. We actually recommend it. Start small. you'll see the benefits even in a smaller workload, and then you at your pace can move workloads over.
Right, and that gets pretty close also to the, when we talk about the essentially just-in-time capacity, right?
Yeah.
The on-demand capacity. In a traditional framework, in a traditional CapEx framework, about the most painful thing you can do is to pre-buy capacity.
Right.
Because it's the flip side of what we said about the cost curve, right? The cost of capacity is always going down. So when you pre-buy capacity, you know you're paying too much for it. Now, again, in the traditional framework, the only thing that's more painful than that is not having capacity when you need it. So you have to do it. But this is like, hey, why put up with that?
Right.
You don't have to do that. Just acquire the capacity when you need it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a better solution all the way around. Let's summarize a bit. I want to take a few minutes. We've talked a lot today. I want to take a few minutes and a few slides and summarize the benefits, the features and benefits of what folks will get. And of course, the first thing they'll get is more, right? Get more from VMware Cloud and AWS. Enterprise-grade performance and security, we talked about that. And the agile infinite storage, paying only for usage. There's the cloud model.
That's that whole piece all wrapped up right there.
And then the last wrapping around it is the expert management, 24/7 by 365. We're here for you, senior technical resources.
Right. Yeah. These are not just call center people. These are storage DevOps engineers who can actually solve your problem.
They're actually running the storage. Yeah.
They run storage. That's what they do.
Yeah. So there you go. A good summary. Of course, the best way to know whether this is right for you is to experience it for yourself. And we do have a free trial program that we think is very simple and very effective, and that is sign up, no credit card, nothing like that. Just come try us out. We have our experts, the ones we were just talking about, the same experts, will help you get set up and will help you run that free trial to get the most out of it. This is very much about being right there with you, step by step, and holding your hand if that's what you'd like. Of course, if you want to run on your own, go for it.
There's no requirement. They can do as minimal or as maximal an onboarding as you require. But we always like to say, you got them helping you out with the setup. Just take advantage of that.
Yeah, you might as well.
It'll make it smoother.
Yeah. So, Mark, we've done pretty well. We're 37 minutes in. We like to keep it, to 35, 40 minutes because we all know everybody's time is valuable. And also we want to leave time for questions, right? We promised at the top of the hour we leave time for questions. Maybe we can dive in and see if
there's a few questions.
Folks have some questions, yeah. So let's see here.
Let's look at that one. Let's look at that one.
Let's start right here at, can this VPSA be shared between on-prem and VMC on AWS?
So the general answer is yes. The caveat, as I mentioned in the discussion, is it depends on network delays, right? You don't want to slow down one or the other because there's a significant network delay between them. So what you really, if you're in an environment where you have either on-premises or co-location resources that are pretty close to your selected AWS region, then the answer is definitely yeah, you can do that. If not, then we go to some of the asynchronous capabilities because physics is like that.
Yeah, that's right. Nobody can get around it. Okay, cool. And by the way, if you'd like a little bit more information about any of the topics that we're answering today, please contact us.
Yeah. You talk to a solutions architect, and they will take you through it at whatever level you need to go through it.
Another question: how will this affect storage compression and/or dedupe? Oh, I'm
not quite sure where to go with that.
I was going to say the same thing. Let's talk about dedupe a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say that we do data reduction in the arrays. And it includes a number of things like dedupe. So that's something that we handle. Now, if you're talking about, well, I don't even want to speculate. I mean, but sometimes you have like WAN interfaces that will do dedupe, and the answer to that would be it would be just the same as if you had a traditional legacy array someplace and we're transferring data. And it's Jason. Yeah, Jason, if you got something specific in mind, why don't you reach out to us and we'll talk you through it. I'm not trying to avoid it. I'm just not quite sure what you want to know about we use data reduction. Compression is in most cases good, so long as you don't encrypt before you compress, which that doesn't work well. But
Yeah.
But yeah, and that would be the only thing. That'd be the caveat I'd throw out is when we talk about how things affect compression and dedupe is like if you're using encryption, then you want to think through your pipeline.
Yeah.
But it's all doable. It's just you just need to approach it with some foresight.
There was a question about the materials that we're using today, and I will remind everybody that these materials are available in the handout section of the GoToWebinar interface, so you can download it right there. And we're happy to make it available. If you have trouble downloading it or can't get it, reach out to us. We'll be happy to send it to you directly, but you should be able to get it right in the handout section. Let's jump into another substantive question. What costs are covered? Just Zadara, AWS costs, VMware costs. Well, of course, you have an AWS account. Your costs are your costs.
Well, in this case, with VMware Cloud on AWS, all your action is through VMware.
Yeah.
Right. So VMware is your cloud operator, and your relationship with VMware Cloud is that. Mm-hmm. Right. It's unchanged. What we add to it is the storage that's capable of being presented in multiple places and showing all this flexibility and doing snapshots and clones and all that kind of capability. And so what you pay us for is for your data consumption.
Yeah. And that storage you're using with us means you're not using storage somewhere else.
Right.
And
right. Well, yeah, that's right.
And those costs you can calculate those costs.
Yeah.
How you're using.
Yeah.
What your alternative.
Your mileage will vary depending on what your contract looks like.
Yeah. RAID protection. Somebody's asking about RAID protection. Happy to talk about.
Yes.
RAID. Yeah.
We do RAID protection.
Exactly. That's a short answer.
We do RAID. We do data protection more generally. We do
right.
data protection. So the block and file capabilities are protected with RAID. There are some options there between 6 and 1 and combinations. And in the case of object, we're using erasure coding, which gets you a little more capacity, a little less consumption, a little less capacity tied up in the data protection. So that's the general answer. Something else for the technically minded, I would tell you that if you go to guides.zadara.com, you can also look at the user guides.
Oh, that's a good idea. Thanks. We have a very specific question, and this is from Mitchell. Thank you, Mitchell. And it is, could you use Zadara for a teaching environment of SQL and dev classes so that you could replicate multiple SQL Server setups daily for teaching?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That's a great use. Depending on you would do that, I think, with clones. If I understand your use case.
He says, yeah, can you use a snapshot so you don't have to build the thing each day?
Right. Yeah. So a clone works very, very similarly to a snapshot. In fact, they're based on the same snapshot technology. The difference between a clone and a snapshot is that a snapshot is a read-only copy. So if what you're creating each day it doesn't have to be modified by the students, say, then snapshot would be great. If you want them to be able to change it, then you go with a clone. But the general answer is yeah, absolutely.
Cool. We have time for a couple more questions. So here's one. Is this over fiber channel or data networking? I think you addressed this a little bit earlier, but let's touch on it.
Yeah, so the answer again is yes. What do you need? Fiber channel is something that only happens either on your premises or potentially in your co-location facility. But we do support fiber channel option for that. More often, it is supported over Ethernet, and then it'll just depend on which profile you're running, whether that's a CIFS or an NFS or iSCSI.
Yeah, this is a good question. Do customers get notified when the non-disruptive upgrades are carried out?
Yes.
Oh yes.
Oh yes. No. Let me say that again. Yes. And we don't execute those upgrades without your involvement.
Right.
You don't have to do anything, but you have to know that it's happening, and we have to agree on when it happens. So they're non-disruptive, but this is a trust and verify, because nobody really wants somebody digging into their storage and running upgrades when they've got peak load.
Right. And again, that's why we have senior technical resources here because they handle things like this.
They handle things like that. And also why we have the worldwide presence.
Yeah, exactly. So we can schedule it and do it, when it's
whenever.
appropriate.
Yeah.
Well, we've been through a number of questions now, and there may be a few more. I'm looking through the list now, but I'm glad we've had this time together, and I'm glad we had a chance to go through this topic. I hope that everybody on today's webinar has found it useful. I hope you've learned a little something about how maybe to enhance your VMware Cloud and AWS environment. And if you do think this looks useful, we welcome you to please reach out to us and learn a little bit more, and we can talk to you about your environment.
Yeah, check out the resources, and if you've got some use cases that you want to cover, talk to us. We'd love to hear from you.
So we want to thank VMware User Group. Thank you, Julie, very much for having us on today's webinar, and thank you, everybody, for attending. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Greg and Mark, for taking the time to speak to us today. As a reminder to our audience, you will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast. To find out more about the VMUG webcast program, visit vmug.com and check out the education page. Please make sure to complete the short online evaluation that will pop up as you exit the webcast, and let us know how today's session went. And from all of us here at VMUG, thank you and have a great rest of your day.